Beautiful. Logan, you're here.
What's going on, guys? How's everybody
Hey,
doing?
awesome. Thanks for
Robin,
having me.
thanks for joining us. Great to see everybody that's joined here today. Hope their week is going fantastic. Robin, I got to say, I've listened to just about every podcast that you've done now, and I really enjoy listening to your voice. I don't know what it is, man, but I tell you what, I could
The
just,
mic.
man, I'm like, wow. Like I'd like this. I don't know if you got a dialect or what, but yeah, your banter with Jordan Harbinger was pretty good.
He is a good friend. He is a
Yeah,
good. Matter of fact, he's the one that bought me this mic because the last podcast I did with him, he usually likes sending people to sound studios,
yeah.
which is unusual for a podcaster. He's doing that well. And with COVID, we couldn't get to one, so he bought me a mic and sent it to me. And I said, where do you want me to send it back to?" He goes, "Oh no, it's yours." And I'm like, "Great, I'll keep using it. Thanks."
That's awesome.
He's a
I've
good
been
guy.
following Jordan since probably 2014 when his podcast was The Art of Charm.
Yep.
And he was kind of helping guys talk to girls,
Yep.
I mean, that's where he got his start, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, and I
Um,
met Jordan before that, and well, before 2014. So Chris Hagnaghi is a social engineer, good friend of mine. We met through Joe Navarro
okay.
because Joe did a podcast for him, and then like a month later, Joe says, "You need to talk to my friend Robin." This is back in 2009, I think. And so Chris and I met on that, and so I actually helped him design his human social engineering course. And along the way, so on our second running of that at Black Hat in Las Vegas, Jordan Harbinger decides to come because Jordan was actually one of the guys on Chris's show as one of the guest hosts from time to time.
Got it.
And so Jordan came out through our class. So that's where we became friends. I think that was back in 2010 or 11. I met Jordan.
Yeah.
Yeah, good
Oh,
guy.
that's really
Crazy.
cool.
Dude's crazy.
Yeah. He's very well connected and has been super successful. And so
Yeah.
loved listening to all of those podcasts. And the guy with Brainfluence was a little skeptical of you at first. And I
Yeah.
think you won him over. I mean, you literally used some of your, some of what we've learned in the book on that podcast because he was definitely skeptical at first.
It was interesting too. I learned a lot from that one. Normally, I mean, when you do podcasts, I'd say, and you've listened to tons, obviously,
Yeah.
99% of the people are there to set you up for success when you're on them.
Yeah.
And he was very challenging.
Uh-huh.
And it actually made me really do better at homework before I go on a podcast. I've never
Absolutely.
turned a podcast down. I never would because it's just that more audience, to get good content out. And but I don't owe that to him being skeptical. I owe that to me. I didn't do a good enough job prepping to have really specific examples for him and his audience.
Yeah. Well, you
So
can tell who the real practitioners are versus the real academics, right? And that's a clear distinction with I think a lot of podcast hosts, which are a lot are on this call right here. But most of these folks are practitioners, not necessarily from the academia side. So all right, cool. Well, I want to use our time wisely. Thanks for joining us. We've got a book club. Jerome, what number book is this? Is this 3 or 4 that we've gone through now?
3.
Okay, so
nice.
we've gone through a more real estate focus. So most of the folks on the line are involved in commercial real estate, syndication, raising capital. But we do have some folks that are just here to continue to focus on personal and professional development. So we read a few books. We read one book on raising capital. And then the second book was, I guess they both were, Oren Clough with Pitch Anything, who I'm sure you potentially might have read his book or just seen him on the circuits, but it's more or less how to, package your idea up in a clear, concise, and compelling way. And then Jerome kind of brought this book up because, in our business, we have a lot of partnerships, right?
Mm-hmm.
Chris Pomerleau is on this call here, and he's the number one practitioner of partnerships. And, Jerome is a guy, and I'm pointing up to my left because I can see all your guys'
Right.
faces, but Jerome is
He's
over
on my
here.
left up there too.
And instead of syndication, which a lot of us do, which is pooling other people's capital together to do larger projects, Jerome is a practitioner of joint ventures where he really has to get to the bottom of understanding who that person is and are they vesting in me? Are they here for the long run? Those things. So, after he mentioned that to me, I was like, this is a book that we definitely want to kind of dive into. And we've really enjoyed breaking it down and learning these different, what you call the six, what is it called? The six signs for behavior prediction, right? And so, the first question I had, because this is your second or third book?
Third. First I self-published, and this is my second that I went with a publisher.
So I don't know if everybody on the line knew that, but tell us what Code of Trust was, your first book, and why this book and what the differences are, because I started to research Code of Trust and put that on the reading list as well. But tell us how this book came about.
Sure. So kind of taking you back to the conversation we were having before with Chris Hagnaghi, back in 2008 or 9-ish. I was teaching at Quantico as a CI, as counterintelligence instructor there. And my job there was taking all those years of doing stuff on the street of recruiting spies and training other people to do it. And so no lesson plans or anything. They kind of said, hey, this is your skill set. Figure out how to teach it to others. And so welcome to Bloom's taxonomy of learning, adult education, facilitation, and just learning from other great instructors. And so I started giving labels and meanings of things. So Chris had me on his podcast and it went well. And then he had me on doing a last minute one. And he said, hey, Robin, someone canceled on me. Can you come on real quick? And I go, sure. What do you want me to talk about? And he goes, I don't know. How do you develop rapport in 5 minutes? Never really thought about making that a linear thing before. And so I came up with the 10 techniques to quick rapport, and that launched the self-published book. And so in life's process and being a journey and not a destination, what I quickly learned from working with, and doing my job, which was basically eliciting information so I could actually assess whether you're a potential threat to national security or whether you're a potential resource to protect national security. It first starts with rapport, and you can do certain things with rapport. And then I started realizing that, what really comes down to is, someone asked me then do an article on what my behavioral team does. We do all these behavioral assessments on recruitment, spies, double agent operations. I traveled the country, all these case agents. And when someone said, write an article about what you do, again, you have to take that subjective art form and make it that paint by number. I gave labels and meanings for what we actually did on the team. And that's when it hit me with like a ton of bricks. It was like, wow, all I'm ever doing is strategizing trust.
Yeah.
And if I can be more cognitive and thoughtful about it, here's the process for trust. And there's 5 steps I use for trust, and which is completely and one of the anchors for everything I do is open, honest communication and transparency, because you cannot have trust unless you are actually being transparent and open. And if you can't be, you can at least be transparent about why you can't be. So again, you're still making it about the other person.
Yeah.
So the Code of Trust was all about the behavior I need to demonstrate value that I have in you and how I want to affiliate with you. In other words, how do you shift the conversation from being all about yourself to being all about the other person? And I got told this in the Marine Corps, and all my stories in here, when I failed majestically at this leadership thing, and the major really simply said, you just have to make it about everyone else but yourself. And I said, great, how? And he goes, I don't know, just do it. Well, it's that elusive art form. I mean, everyone says, just develop rapport and then do this. Yeah, go develop rapport. Give me the steps. What are you actually going to do? How are you going to do it?
Yeah.
So that's what that was all about. And that's what the Code of Trust was about. So living the Code of Trust for a good number of years and seeing the majesty of it, because it really is, it's not my process. It's a process of understanding others. And if you honor the code, and one of the things in the code to honor is ego suspension. So you continually make that self-rating check to make sure it's not about you, but about them. And that answers one of the questions on sincerity and genuineness, is if you have no expectations of reciprocity when you're being a servant for others, that's when it's genuine and sincere. So what I started realizing is I was focused so much on the other people that I started realizing, wow, I can actually predict what you're going to do. Because if I actually take the time to figure out what your priorities are in terms of that safety, security, and prosperity as you define them, and now I offer you resources in terms of those priorities, you're going to take advantage of it. Why wouldn't you? So that became very predictable. If I take the time to understand you at that deep core level of being a human being, I now know what you're going to do. And again, they always, and that's why I love differentiating and sizing people up. That's not about trust. That's about understanding and predictability, because at the core of absolutely everything is, how do I form a strong, healthy professional relationship with everyone?
Yep.
And that's how. And so part of sizing people up is mitigating your expectations, getting rid of hope, and getting rid of setting the bar up here. And everyone always falls short because, well, he's a good guy. I like him. I like her. So I can trust him to perform at this level. Really? How? What's your data
Yeah.
points on that? So that's what this is all about. Because if I then set that bar up here and it falls and you fall down here, what happens? You get angry, you get resentful, you get discontentment, and then the healthy relationship blows up. And it was your fault because you did not assess what you could reasonably expect from this human being to do in this particular lane. And I'm very particular on that too. Just because you fall short in this lane, or you don't want to engage me in this lane, doesn't mean that we can't engage here, 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 or here. And so that's where the kind of flow went to, from rapport, trust, and then really sizing people up, which is understanding others.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. And I think about when I try to read a book, if I can get one thing from a book, I really feel successful. And I'm an achievement-based type of guy, so I'm always trying to get maybe one thing. And when I think about sizing people up and listening to, I don't know, close to 10, I think, interviews that I could find that you had done, what I heard continuing was that we're all hardwired for safety, security, and prosperity for ourselves. That's it. We want to be safe, we want to be secure, and we want to be prosperous. And, if you can figure out where somebody's operating out of, that's going to help I think the whole conversation, and to build that trust and rapport. And that was one thing I really liked. And Jordan Harbinger even broke it down a little bit farther. He said that, his own definition was measuring self-interest and then the predictability of them following that self-interest. And, and I think about your book and vesting and longevity and reliability and things like that. When I'm in the moment, right? Like when I'm either working with somebody or, I need to be congruent with what they're seeing and hearing from me. I can't think about all 6 of those things. So one thing I can think about really quickly is, where are they coming from? Is it safety, security, or prosperity? Do you have any more thoughts about that? Or how did you come across, I guess just coming up with that notion? Because I've heard it in other books, but I'm just curious to hear your sentiment along those lines, especially in the work that you were using this for.
Yeah, I found that to be, the heart of all motivations. And that notion came about when I was working on the Code of Trust, because I remember it comes down to a term I coined in the first book, which is means goals and ends goals.
Okay.
And basically the means to the ends. And everyone is always focused on the means goals, being, I got to make the sale. I want to get the sale so I can buy the car. It's all these tangible, very, very close in goals. And really the whole purpose of you doing every single one of those things is so at the very end, you can actually have safety, security, and prosperity for yourself and your family. So every action becomes centered around that. And that can be philanthropy. That could be, taking care of, elderly and older homes. I mean, there's lots of ways that people define those things. And so that's where understanding that really comes to play without judging it. And therein lies, the real challenge of this process is you got to let go of confirmation bias, which is very challenging. Your own ego and vanity, what you're trying to make someone to be, and also your own training ahead of time. I often tell people, because we go through so much, different training, in law enforcement, in any organization. You're like, hey, you're going to work Middle East, so we're going to give you a block on understanding Middle Easterners. Really? I'm going to learn everything about every single Middle Eastern individual I'm going to get in this 3-hour block of instruction. There's no way. I don't even try. Because, the analogy I always love is, people say, Robin, you work Russians most of your career. Are you a Russian expert? I said, I don't know. You live in the United States most of your life. Are you a United States expert? Every state has its own dialect, has its own, and even my own state of Virginia right here. I mean, we have about 5 different dialects in Virginia, depending on where you're at, tempo of life, economic status, social status, and it's so prevalent now too. I mean, you cannot take the things you think you learned about anyone or anything and impose that, because as soon as you do that, the chance of you being off is really high. And, and when the stakes of the world sometimes feel like they're on your shoulders and you're knocking on the front door to try to make a friend, the last thing you want to do is go in with some preconceived notion of who you think they are before you knock on that door. So so it's overcoming that hardwiring for self-centeredness and thinking you know everything, which is what I'm hardwired to do, was probably the greatest thing ever. And the easiest way to do it is just have curiosity.
Yep. I like that. Okay. I've got 2 more questions, and I'm going to turn it over to the rest of the group, because I'm hogging the time here, but, these have been ingrained in me since I knew we were going to be able to ask you some questions. So first one, is, do you know Chris Voss?
Yeah, we were talking about it before you turned on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, Chris. I'm not what I say buddies with him. When I first came on my behavioral team in 2001, he actually did one of our blocks of instruction. It was pretty entertaining because literally he had our whole team there, and he started out with their typical starting scenario is, all right, I got a gun to your head. I'm gonna pull the trigger in 5 minutes. Convince me not to, go.
Yep.
And he went around the room of all these expert behavioralists, and we all died. So that's how the class opened up. So it was pretty intense, intense there too with Chris. Great expert. Again, like I was saying beforehand, in the world of behavioral things, everyone has a lane, and really depends on what your job was. So Chris's was crisis negotiation in high stakes circumstances. And he is I would call him the world expert on doing it. He did it for a very, very long time. I mean, he was an expert in 2001 when I came on the team. I mean, he's been doing it that long.
Right.
Because that was his lane. Joe Navarro, very, very good friend of mine, world-renowned nonverbal expert. I was tutored under Joe because he's a good friend, and he was on my behavioral team. He's one of the founders of it. And so I started out nonverbals, but Joe focused on nonverbals because Joe's lane was tons and tons of espionage and terrorism interviews. So it's a lot of one-on-one, 2-on-1 interviews where he could really pay attention to the nuances of the entire body. And that's what I started with. But my train was towards I got to develop tons and tons of confidential human sources, spies. So mine was purely sales, as I call it, because I had to build relationships with people that did not want to build relationships with the FBI.
And you couldn't talk to them.
No, it was crazy. It was really crazy. And so my lane took it from all these different nuances to, all right, how do I package that for the things I need to do?
Yeah. Okay. So the reason I asked that was a segue into a question that I've learned a lot from Chris, utilizing mirrors, labels, tactical empathy, calibrated questions, those type of things, right? And one of the things that you mentioned in, I can't remember what article it was or what interview it was, but it was this this thing that you've labeled sympathy. Which, which I'm always studying. Stephen Covey talks about the difference between sympathy and empathy, but you take it one step farther. Chris Voss talks about tactical empathy, but then also you called it sympathy. So why don't you tell the group what sympathy is and how you kind of coined that term, because I had to use sympathy over the weekend and it worked wonders. So I want the group to hear that from your lips.
I find sympathy is a combination of the two words, stoicism and empathy. And I have found, especially as a leader, and let me frame leadership for me, leadership is anyone that is actually in a position to try to inspire someone to action, which is everyone. And whether it's you as a parent, coworker, in your sales leader, I mean, I don't care what it is, that if someone is trying to inspire someone for action, I don't use the word convince or manipulate or persuade. I'm all about inspiration, because that means things that focuses on them. They need that combination, because stoicism on the side of cause and effect of human behavior without being emotionally attached to the outcome that the other person is choosing or the outcome that you're choosing. So it's understanding just, all right, I understand you as a human being, genetically and biologically and socially. And I know, if I do X, Y, and Z, most likely you're going to do X, Y, and Z. Very just cause and effect. But the way you actually build that relationship and make it so it is genuine and it is sincere is the only way you can build that relationship is to understand how they see the world through their optic and their context, which is empathy. So I always, I am very, very connected with the human beings, everyone I have contact with, because I have this great curiosity. I love to dive deep. I love to understand you. But at the end of the day, the stoicism part is I'm not going to get emotionally attached to the decisions you make, because then I start riding your emotional roller coaster. If I start riding your emotional roller coaster, I start losing my objectivity. I stop being a resource for you, because great resources in other people's lives are able to be objective for them in times of stress, in times of crisis, and in times of good times. I call them life's beta testers, people that actually can give you that honest feedback. And honest feedback is actually just observation. It's not actually telling you what do you think about the observation.
Yeah, absolutely. It reminds me of a little bit of Viktor Frankl's book, A Man's Search for Meaning, where he mentioned the fact that between a stimulus and a response, there's a choice, right? Mm-hmm. And you have
sometimes.
That choice. Yeah, you have that choice. Yeah, sometimes, right? But then Crucial Conversations took it kind of to the next level and said, that choice, you have an opportunity to tell yourself a story about what the response is that you've just brought in from somebody else, from an existential circumstance. And so I love that, because I've not heard that word sympathy. And one way that
I made it up. Thanks.
Yeah. And one way that you mentioned practicing it, though, is when somebody's coming at you, or, maybe throwing an idea at you that's completely different, or, just might be conflicting worldview. You just kind of say, huh, that's interesting. Right. That was kind of, and I kind of heard you say that on a couple of other, interviews as well. But do you have any other, I'm a practical guy, right? I like it to be complete at the theoretical level, but also effective at the applied level. So I'm curious, do you have any other ways that I can practice sympathy on a regular basis?
My gold standard on the answer for this one, because I get asked it a lot, is the best thing you can do is start being curious.
Yeah.
The second you hear something that doesn't fit with your worldview, be curious as to why.
Yeah.
Be curious about yourself, and be curious about the person presented it to you. Because when you have that curiosity, you then have good congruence, as you mentioned, between your emotions and your words, because people pick up when you're fraudulent. They pick up an incongruence between the nonverbals you're exhibiting and the words coming out of your mouth. When you have congruence, you're no longer the creepy car salesman. You're actually someone who actually has genuine, sincere curiosity about you, because human beings, we want people to agree with us, but we more care that they hear us. And the way you hear someone is to be curious about them genuinely. And you do that by having this congruence. And so the judgmental Northeasterner here, who was born in New York City, raised just north of New York City, hardcore type A, ENTJ and the Myers-Briggs. I mean, I'm genetically, biologically coded to be a judgmental jerk. And so the way to overcome that is every time I heard something that didn't fit my experience in life, I used to poke at it. But I guarantee you this, you poke at it, shields up, no relationship, no trust, and your brand goes in the tank in a second, and you'll never get it back. As opposed to, as soon as I hear something that doesn't quite fit my experience, I do just like this. I said, I haven't heard that before. Tell me more about that. I mean, we have a family, and this is years ago. My first experience, my wife seeing this was, we're at a holiday dinner with long friends of my family that I grew up with. And this guy was the best man at my wedding, and their kids are a little bit older than my kids. And there's an aspect of his life that he said he wanted to share when we got together for this Thanksgiving. I said, okay. My wife's like, nah, there's nothing weird here. He's just pulling your leg. Well, we get there. And this is before things in the world started changing. This is probably back in 1997-ish. And, or probably 99, as my kids were already born. And we finally sit down there. My wife starts off the conversation with the couple and says, hey, Robin knew you were pulling his leg when you said you had some sort of lifestyle change, so you're just pulling his leg. I mean, she started poking the bear, right?
Yeah.
And he goes, well, yeah, we actually did want to talk about that. We actually brought another woman into our life, and and my wife she immediately starts, start trying to frame it around so she's the nanny. I mean, and I'm sitting here, haven't heard this before.
Yeah.
Tell me more about this. I mean, what was I'm like, what's the impetus? Is it all about, you want more chicks? You want more bill? I mean, I was like, help me understand how this works. I was curious, like, that's interesting. Haven't heard this before, and so it was really trying to understand it. So I was totally enthralled with the conversation, because it was a perspective on life that I hadn't heard, especially from him before.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, it was a shocker. And meanwhile, my wife was like,
yeah,
it was blowing her mind because, and again, later on, she became curious. But what happened in that initial onset was shields up.
yeah,
As opposed to me, it was like, hey, I'm curious. This is interesting. Tell me more about this.
It's kind of like the time that you met with a group of Dominatrix folks in a Starbucks.
Oh my God, that was great.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
That was so funny. So this is early in my career too. This is like one of my first times where I'm actually finally starting to get the groove of interacting with people and developing sources. So we had one of our Russian intelligence officers. He's online, cruising all sorts of porn sites. And I thought, well, this is his priorities. Is there any kind of overlap I can, kind of make a connection here with to try to sell him other bills of good, like, help the United States. You're looking for anything.
Yeah.
So one of his priorities was he was into bondage and stuff. And so I was able to find one of the websites he was actually buying some of his videos from. And they actually came back to an address in Brooklyn. And so I looked up the address, and actually they had a P.O. box actually in my hometown where I lived in Rockland County. I said, well, I actually took out one of my business cards, said FBI, New York City. And I put my name, Robin. I said, hey, I'd love to have a chat sometime. I work counterintelligence. No one's in trouble. Again, transparency. If you feel comfortable with it, again, power with choice, please give me a call. 2 weeks later, they actually did give me a call, and it was their lawyer. And they said, hey, what's this all about? And I said, well, it'd be better if we could talk about it over a cup of coffee because it is national security related. And it's really just about one of your customers. I'm curious if you know anything and be willing to share anything because I'm not quite sure what his motivations are towards the United States. If that's something you're comfortable with, let me know. Again, that's my typical sales things like, hey, transparency, here's what it's about. Give them choice, make sure they're comfortable. They said, yeah, sure, we could do that. And they said, hey, they said they're based in Brooklyn. I said, I'm in Lower Manhattan. How about we meet? There's a Starbucks off the 6th train, in Greenwich Village. And so they said, okay, we'll meet you there. So I bring my friend Tom, who's on my squad with me. And I think was I 30, 31 at the time, maybe. I mean, I was young.
Yeah.
And wore my sport coat, my tie, and so did he. And we're sitting at the Starbucks waiting for them to come in. I'm looking around with Tom, and I say, man, how are we going to recognize these people? And all of a sudden, here comes the show. So the dominatrix that came in, she was a large lady in very, very tight leather with things spilling out all over. She had on a leash, one of their actresses, I guess, very emu looking goth girl who's walking on all fours with their collar on. And their lawyer was this big, very tall, spiked leather boots, tight leather pants, and biker jacket, big blonde hair. That was their lawyer.
Oh my gosh.
And so they come in for the interview, and I say, hey, have a seat. Kind of get you some coffees, Danish. And so I got them some coffee, and literally I'm looking at this, and you're trying to think, how do I develop rapport here? Where's the commonality? Which is, part of rapport is understanding what you have in common. And I said, so literally the question I led off with was, so do you make your own movies, or do you kind of like resellers? And they said, well, we actually make our own, and she's one of our brand new actresses. And I looked down, I said, hey, good for you, congratulations. And actually, with that opening, again, not judging,
no judgment,
they were so friendly. They were so willing to help. They said, hey, we can show you all the credit card records. He's actually not doing much. He just, bought a streaming service. And so again, because it started out with no judgment. Here I am in this suit, and here they walk in like this, and it's just another people in the world, and it's just their way of rolling.
That's interesting. That's it's curiosity. That's my big takeaway. I appreciate you sharing all of those stories with the group. I'm going to let Jerome or somebody else jump in and maybe ask a few of the questions that we thought through,
and I did print them all out if you want me to.
Awesome.
So I can actually try to give email responses if you want to all of them at some point.
That'd be awesome. Yeah. I mean, that'd be really, really cool. Maybe since we've got some people here that are live, if you've heard anything that maybe sparked something in your mind that you wanted to ask Robin, go for it, and if not, we can jump into some of the questions that we preloaded, but I'm going to give it to Jerome. He seems like he's got something.
I like your smile, Jerome. Thank you. Because the best thing, anytime you're speaking with the group, the thing you do is you scan the audience for people smiling back at you, and then you lock on. So
That's
thank
right.
you all for smiling.
No problem. So the question about the curiosity and without judgment, that one is one that I I don't struggle with it, but what happens from time to time is people expect to be judged. And
Mhm.
when you don't judge them and you start asking the curious question, they kind of push you away like, wait,
Mhm.
you actually want to know more. So what do you do when you experience that to disarm it? Because
Show patience.
one of the things that I struggle with.
So the most important thing is to realize that, all right, their tempo is different than mine. I have a very high tempo. My op tempo is high. My intensity is high because intensity basically is a focus and a tempo. And the most important thing is to realize that, all right, I induced a little bit of stress here. They either pulled away, and if they pull away, give them twice. It's if they shut down, then back off. Let them shut down. I mean, because people always say, well, how do you get someone to open up? I said, you don't. If someone doesn't want to open up, what's one of their priorities? Not opening up. And so you have to talk in terms of their priorities. And so as I see someone locking down or pulling away, I say, oh, let me apologize right now before we keep going. I'm obviously operating at a bad tempo. I probably had too much coffee today. My fault. You let me know when's a good time maybe to get back together, even if you want to, if you're comfortable with it. And because I do not want to cause any kind of discomfort in you whatsoever, because I am a freak. So it's one of those things is you can't make anyone do anything, because this then goes to my one again, it's all circular for me, this anchor adage of making it about them. And I always say I'd rather have, and like when I retired, I had 7 confidential human sources. I could have had hundreds because I love making relationships a lot of fun. And I could have convinced people to do things, but I'd rather have it 7 people give me 120% of their effort willingly than 100 people give me 10% reluctantly. So if you're not looking for a relationship with me, or the tempo is different than the tempo I'm looking for, I'm going to accommodate your tempo. And now if the work world I live in requires you to have that higher tempo, I'm going to have transparency on that and say, listen, our deal is I have to do X, Y, and Z in a certain time frame because of the regulations or the things or the pressures I'm under. I just want to share that with you so that if that's not comfortable for you and your timeline, you let me know and I will not bother you. Or you let me know a time on the calendar that would be on your timeline and I can get back to you. And because I work a lot with the financial sector, it's probably my greatest customers as well, because it's all about customer relations and building those relations. And a lot of times they're building these relationships over time. And I've had numerous people say to me, say, Robin, I have courted this guy, this high-end investor for a year, 2 years at a time. Every time I come to town, I take him to dinner and he just never pulls the trigger. What do I do? I said, well, you make it about him. He says, what do you mean? I said, well, next time you get together, say, listen, I am so sorry. I think I've been really wasting your time. I've enjoyed our conversations. We've got to know each other. And you made it look like you might be willing to do some business together. And I think I might be off on that. Let me know. Is that the case? So, because again, I don't want to waste your time, but if you do want to do some business, let me know how we can move together forward. And again, that entire statement was about him and his behavior and how it's your fault that you might have misinterpreted that. And then you can kind of say, hey, I'd love to still get together with you when I come to town, but I also do need to do business. You let me know what you want to do and what you're comfortable with. Again, the shift is all about them.
Ball in their court.
Yep, always. And it's so funny. And what all this is labels and meanings. I love talking to groups. I was on a call today with a group I'm doing a talk with in September. And they're saying, oh, Robin, these are all the CEOs. These are high-end guys. These are the founders of the company. I said, these are my peeps. They said, what do you mean? I said, I'm going to explain to them exactly why they're so successful. I love telling people why they're awesome. People like you all are awesome. You're very successful. I love having you understand why. Because when you understand exactly what you're doing, you actually reflect, because we gave some things some great labels and meanings, you can now repeat it. And the most important thing is when it falls sideways a little bit or doesn't go quite the way you anticipated it, you can now reflect. But the most important thing is I think about every single conversation I have nonstop for the rest of the day. And if it goes sideways in some way, probably the rest of the week and rest of the month, always wrestling with, all right, what did I do to cause something that goes a little sideways? Full accountability for myself. And just realizing then, like you said at the beginning, was, what can I do? If their tempo is just accommodate the tempo.
Hey, Robin, Jason Holzer here.
Hey, Jason.
Question about how do you get to or connect with people that maybe are like a level, maybe 2 or 3 levels ahead of like where you want to be at? Like you see them like as somebody you want to become. So how would you maybe and you work to get up to meeting them at their level? And then when you do connect with them, how do you keep them engaged to want to get to know you more?
Same company or different company?
Different so I myself I'm also an author, and then I'm also working on like some different programs to present to people. So like looking to get influencers, I guess, if you will.
So I've given a decent amount of kind of guidance for people trying to do that, including my own son and my own kids. I think the best way, again, if you're trying to interview, try to become a mentoree of someone at that level, that is a couple levels above you, how do you make that conversation about them? You start off by seeking their thoughts and opinions. You validate their time, for even taking your call, for taking even an email from you, and you put in your subject line, seeking your thoughts and opinions about mentorship, about guidance, about your resume, all these things. So I love identifying the resume of someone that it is you're trying to be, and then asking them, hey, would you happen to have a few minutes to kind of share your experiences along the way, any pitfalls you have, and advice and guidance you might have for me, so I could one day be you. There's nothing more validating than that. And I have not met anyone not willing to at least give me 3 minutes, or at least a return email with something like that. And there's your road in, because as soon, whatever advice or guidance they give you, well, you start getting a buffet of things to explore more with. Again, having curiosity about this, so for some, say, so here's a great thing. I mean, just off the top of my head. So someone has this resume and things they've done, and you want to achieve their position, but you've kind of lost the opportunity to do a few of these educational things along the way, or work experience, companies that made them who they were. Say, listen, I can't do these things because, I didn't have the same opportunities because of X, Y, and Z. What else would you recommend I could do that like some of the pitfalls that you would have avoided, or that you think you could have done? Again, constantly. These 4 things, if you include these 4 things in your request of anyone, the conversation becomes about them. And I said them throughout my book, and Logan, I know you've heard in all my talks. Seek their thoughts and opinions. Talk in terms of their priorities and what's important to them. And by researching their resumes and bios and curriculum vitalis, you actually know what their priorities are. So seek their thoughts and opinions about those things. Validate the greatness you see in those certain areas. And so validation isn't about flattery. Flattery is very surface to me. Validation means you're seeking to understand with that curiosity. So look for those overlaps. Like, I had a similar experience to this, as I think you did. What do you think I could have done differently? Or how would you propel, or how did you propel yourself from this position to this position? And what recommendation would you make for me, for me to be able to do something similarly? And the way you encapsulate the entire thing at the end, I think, and this is with anyone, is try to figure out what their jobs and responsibilities are and what their priorities are, and figure out how you're going to be a resource for them. Because you got to give a gift. And the best gift I think you can give anyone is figure out what their job is and how you're going to make it easier.
Got it. And then let's say you have like a great conversation with somebody, because this happened to me, but then you do a follow-up with them, and then it's kind of nothing. You just keep waiting, just kind of give them a chance to respond. Do you think not to be too forward, but like the balance of, receiving and giving kind of thing?
Yeah, I do the same thing. I've done so many cold calls. I did a lot of cold calls. When you're trying to recruit, 400 clear defense contractors to be confidential human sources for the FBI, just in one little area here, you do a lot of cold calling. And patience. Yeah, you definitely have to have patience. And if it's someone that's higher priority, that could be a great resource. The most I've ever done is 2 follow-ups. Apologizing for the follow-up. And one of the greatest things I've done that has actually elicited a response. So if someone doesn't want to talk to you, what's one of their priorities? They don't want to talk to you. So the way I validate that I'm wasting my time is I say, I have email exchange. I do a lot of training sometimes where I'm actually showing email exchanges, and in one of the exchanges, I'll put in there, if it's a second contact, I'll say, hey, I'm just following up because I know you get a lot of emails, so I apologize for taking your time. I'm interested in doing X, Y, and Z because I think it'd be a resource for you in this area. If you don't want to receive emails from me because I'm being a bother and this is not an interest, please just let me know and I'll make a note in the file never to bother you again. So I'm actually inspiring them to take an action, which actually takes care of one of their priorities. Get rid of me. Just give me confirmation you want me to leave, and then I can close it. I know I'm not wasting their time anymore.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
You bet. And I'm sorry, I'm not following the chat stream. Should I be? I'm sorry.
Oh, so I had a question. I'm kind of curious, more real world example. I know it's not from the book, but obviously with the Chinese consulate down in Houston.
Oh yeah, worked out a lot.
Just kind of curious your perspective. Like, can you paint us a picture of, how that investigation would have started and, kind of how that information would have come to light that it was, theoretically a spy hub?
So no, it's a spy hub. It has been for years. Okay. I mean, I've done so many behavioral assessments for the Houston office throughout the course of my career. It's ridiculous. But that is every consulate and every diplomatic establishment in our country, for every nation.
Yeah.
I mean, every single nation has, so the way the world of intelligence works is 95 to 98% of the intelligence collectors for countries in the world are diplomats. They're under diplomatic cover. They're posing as diplomats because if they're diplomats, they have immunity from prosecution for committing crimes in that country, like espionage or theft of trade secrets, or, all these things are punishable. And so the way they get around it is they hide their intelligence officers under diplomatic cover. So if they are caught, they just get expelled. They don't get thrown into jail. So the two premier countries that do that in our country are Russia and China. I mean, and so I'll give you an optic of Russia alone because I had the numbers when I was in New York. So I worked the Russian military intelligence in New York City. It's the GRU. That's the military branch of their intelligence collection. The SVR is the civilian branch of it. And my squad, I had a squad of 10 people, and my squad of 10 people, we were roughly officers collecting, information gaps that their country deems as valuable. Everyone always thinks, intelligence officers are collecting military intelligence or tops. No. Most of the time they're collecting things that cost countries money to develop. And so technology theft, intellectual property theft, that is the premier thing that our adversaries are trying to do to undermine our economy and bolster theirs. And so what the Chinese are very, very good at is they use the grain of sand mentality. They will set, if you have family back in China and you want to study abroad, you're going to be an intelligence collector. And your piece of intelligence is just going to be one tiny little grain of sand. But you're going to bring that grain of sand back, and we're going to assemble that grain of sand. And Houston was at the forefront of most of their activity that they were doing, and has been for years. I always love watching the news sometimes, although it's infuriating, so I turn it off. Everything that you see coming out about Russia and now China is nothing new. They've been doing this for a very, very long time. It's just now politically the time to do something about it. I remember, when I was at FBI headquarters working in Russia, and we had, actually, if you ever want to read a fascinating book that'll give you the true story about stuff that's going on, because it's been going on a long time, so it's just always fascinating to me. I did this for 21 years, and now in the last 2 years, now you're saying what I did was important. Well, what the hell happened in my last 20 years? Same thing with the Chinese. All those numbers, our director put out about, we have 5,000 cases, counterintelligence cases. Yeah, they didn't just pop up. No, they've always been there. It's so take it all, so here's what I always leave people with, it's like, don't freak out about what you see. Just know that we've been working it a long time. Someone just cares about it today. And I'm glad. That was a bold move. So what it also did was put a bunch of FBI agents out of work. Now they're going to work something else.
I did have a question about the book too. So
Sure.
I really appreciate that response. But the question was around one of the points in the book, how you talk about it's important to reevaluate your relationship with people throughout time. Right. And
yeah,
so
that's multiple threads here. Yeah, go ahead.
And so I think that's one that I struggle with, because especially like Logan said, when you talked about financing or real estate transactions or anything, you might do one transaction with somebody and it goes smoothly, and then the next one they rip you off and you're like, well, hey, how could I have not seen that coming? And so I think what's your reevaluation method kind of in a relationship? Do you look for key indicators to say, wow, that was a little, I didn't expect that, now I need to start reevaluating my level of trust with them. So what's kind of the process there?
So my process is constant baselining. I am constantly baselining. So every engagement, you create a baseline. And so from one engagement to the next engagement, we should have a consistent baseline of what the behaviors are that I'm expecting, the language you're going to use, the topics we're going to be talking about, the degree of intensity of the topics we're talking about, the tempo of the conversations. All these things are establishing, in the back of our brains, without us realizing it, a baseline. And so I think, I actually have it's coming out in my course I'm putting out hopefully in a couple of days, what I call a behavioral analysis guide. And so what you can do for yourself, since you all read the book, is all my guide is you identify the individuals that you're interacting with that are the higher importance, I guess. Everyone's important in your life, but the ones that you really want to focus on. And for each of these individuals, write down each one of the 6 signs, write down each one of the 10 tells, positive and negative, and then start making your baseline. And if you make an observation that they're exhibiting one of these tells, you need an example. Because if it's subjective, I feel like he's this way or she's this way. No, give an example. And so now you have an established baseline. I know it's a lot of work. You're not going to do this every single time, but it's going to make you at least, because as soon as you at least do it the first time, or at least peruse it so you can give some labels and meanings to the observations you made one-on-one with this person, the next time you interact, you're going to notice what's going to shift. And if you don't want to do all that work, or you don't have time, because it is a lot of work, it's laborious, always look for that weird feeling. So when you break contact from a meeting, you should be walking away each time with a smile on your face saying, man, that went good. And if you walk away and you even got a slight, I call it a tremor in the force, that something was a little off, you're right. Something was a little off. You got to figure out what it is. You have to figure out what it was and whether it's in a critical area or not, and whether, and how to address it. But if you get a tremor in that force, you're right. Something's different. And generally different things are caused by a shift in the priorities of the other individual, or they're also caused by a shift in how you've presented something. So there's a lot to assess, but that's how I do it. I establish that baseline and I pay attention to tremors in the force. I use this in my own life a lot, where I have a great relationship with someone. We have this agreement. So pay attention to the tremors in the force. And what happens is, this is where sympathy kicks in. This is where maintain that cause and effect. Something caused a tremor in the force. Figure it out. It's not just, you imagining things. No, you're noticing a difference, and something caused that difference. Now, the thing is, you don't want to jump to conclusions about it. Pay attention to it. And depending on the type of relationship you have, you can address it too. I mean, I do that a lot. If I feel a tremor in the force where I caused a moment of discomfort, I say, ooh, did I say something a little off? Or call them back later. It's like, I really thought about our meeting and I feel I might have been off base, or, was something off, what can I do to write something not be off? Or maybe you're not looking to do something, and this is what Chris Voss does, give some emotional labeling to it, and have them either confirm it or deny it, but at least creates that conversation. Because then what are you doing? You're demonstrating you pay attention to them. You don't need to be right. You just need to care, and you need to make it about them. So I think it's to pay attention and decide what to take action on.
So why make the assumption, or why give them the out instead of forcing the conversation to confirm the suspicion?
That's your choice. It really depends on the situation you're in. I'd say for most individuals, I talk to, I kind of address it from the standpoint of, oof, I'm off, I'm sorry. And I might not even realize it at the time, but I take a note of it at the time, and I kind of will a lot of times breeze through it thinking, that was weird. And I'll kind of keep going. But literally I reflect immediately afterwards if we break contact, and I was like, oh yeah, I was off on that one. I literally had this, it was a meeting at work. And it was, like right before I retired, and I ran these working groups. And one of my buddies that was on this working group, FBI guy, and we're having a working group with all these other outside agencies, and which basically we're saying we're sharing each other's priorities. We're talking about the resources we have in terms of each other's priorities, and then we go to lunch. Makes a great day. And so about him looks like he's changing positions, and it was kind of known that he's going to be shifting from one position to another position. During the course of the meeting, I said, "Oh, I'm buying this to this," and his face, he did one of these quick little eye compression, lip compression as I'm going around the room, looking at the reaction from people saying, "Hey, congratulations!" And he gave me a stress look, a stress indicator. In other words, I did something to induce stress, and I noted it, and I blew by it in the meeting. But right after, I said, "I am so sorry." I took control of that, and it was my vanity and ego, because having power of information that isn't mine to own, that was not for me to say. And I apologize. And he goes, "I really appreciate that, because I didn't want to share that with that group." And I just take ownership of that at the moment. So to answer your question, I generally will address it right away. It kind of depends on the level of relationship you have. That was a closer relationship, so it's a little easier to do it a little faster. If it's more of a earlier development one and more of a quid pro quo, might not necessarily need to do that. It's something you could actually make sure you just don't do again at the next encounter with them, to mitigate it. So did I answer it right, or did I not understand the question right, Jerome?
No, you hit it. It's just sometimes I think we let people off assuming that something happened or something was wrong, and there's not actually something wrong, or we don't actually figure out what the issue was. And so
yeah, that's too. I've had that. Who hasn't had that? Or I probably say I'm sorry more than anyone human being I know. And did I need to? Yeah, a lot of times I didn't need to. And so it's interesting. I've actually had some people come back to me, "Well, that does not just present you as soft." Okay. Presents me as me and caring about how my impact on you. And if you don't like it, well, then you don't want to have a good relationship with me anyway. So I'm good. I mean, so it really just comes down to that, is like, I do my best because I need you in my life more than you need me in your life. And so I need to be the one to accommodate you. You know, I learned that at Quantico. It's really funny. Quantico, when you're teaching at the training academy there, we house everyone there, and they go through our classes, and it's, and then we have these outside presenters, and we have people that maintain our facilities and all these things. And I remember we're having a problem with one of our screen projectors or something. And we've had the office manager she had 35 years in a bureau, all on the job. She's a master of knowing everyone. She's like the Radar O'Reilly, get everything done. And someone wasn't responding to us in time for me to get a class going on time. And I had a comment, I had to kind of shift things around. And boy, I was ranting and raving about, this person is, Liz, I'm going to give her a piece of my mind, next time I see them, kind of thing, or talk to their boss. She goes, "Really?" She said, "How's that going to work out?" And she goes, "Well," and I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Well, do you need her or does she need you?" It was great. It's a great answer. It's like, "Well, I guess I need her." Then she said, "Then you better be the one accommodating." I was like, "Well, that's a good point." I mean, there's a point of professionalism and a point of, it really came down to effectively communicating. It was, how many times have people seen this, finance in every company? I think the people that run the bills and run your vouchers and everything, generally the people that you actually have to take the biggest care of. In New York City, it was really funny. Our New York field office, you had to walk in. If you're going to give a voucher to these girls, you had to walk in with your blood money. And for them, it was Reese's peanut butter cups. For the guys at the garage that took care of our fleet of cars, it was Dunkin' Donuts. I mean, you actually, and I remember we had a guy on our squad. He was ranting and raving about how, this person, this voucher person wasn't taking care of this and this. And so he actually sent an email to the supervisor. That dude never had another voucher process the rest of his career in New York. Doesn't make it right, doesn't make it wrong. It just makes it what it is. Life is about a balance between, being effective is a balance between having the skills and tools you need to do the job, but without the relationships on the other side, you can't get anything done. So understanding that balance and maintaining the yin and yang of those things together will get everything done. You don't want, it's like people say, "Oh, you're just kissing ass." I said, no, there's a big difference. Kissing ass is where you're trying to make yourself look good in front of someone. Being a resource for their success without that expectation of reciprocity. Now, who do they want around them? I mean, as my son's learning at the Naval Academy, if there's so many rules and regulations in every industry and every organization, if they want to get you, they're going to get you. I like to make it so they don't want to get you. In other words, if you are a resource for people being awesome around you and above you, and you're not without that expectation, in other words, what can you do to make their job easier? Who's going to want to get you? No one. Who's going to want to partner with you? Everyone. What's that do to your brand? Everything. Because brand is absolutely everything. Your brand is your life, and that's why if you guys have researched me, you will not see any sort of political rant on either side on anything and anything I do, because as soon as you take a side, and now they're trying to not get you to take a side, the world will line up against you. My excuse is this: I'm a behavioralist. I sit back and watch, observe, and then I can't make a decision yet. I'm just going to keep observing.
Love it. Hey, Chris, you want to jump in with your question, man?
Yeah, happy to. Thank you. Thanks, Robin, for doing all this. It's awesome.
Thanks I got goosebumps because there's no better validation to have a bunch of people ask you your thoughts and opinions. So thanks.
Usually when I start speaking, people get goosebumps. So I appreciate that you're falling right in line. Thank you.
It's awesome.
Actually, my question was, in the field that I'm in, I'm an attorney by trade. And so I practice as an attorney all day, but I do a lot of real estate investing. And so I'm always finding partners or different people to invest with me on these real estate deals. And sometimes, whether I guess it's the legal portion or whether it's real estate, but I know you'd probably like a foundation to move on. So let's keep it the real estate sector. Sometimes I have to move quickly on an opportunity. Mm-hmm. And so when I'm moving quickly on that opportunity, I'm also trying to vet my partners and or people I'm working with. And my worry would be that I could spend too much time vetting those partners and so much time that I lose the opportunity that I had to make a quick decision on. And so my question would be, at what point have you vetted enough? Is a B- okay if you feel as though your exit strategy is okay? Or do you need that A- or higher that makes it so that you sufficiently size them up and you feel comfortable? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, it does. I had this a lot as well, and still sometimes do. And I've everything I've ever done, whether it was professionally, personally, I love always having plan B. And if I'm not willing to execute with plan B, then I won't execute. And so and you said it, and that's what sparked my mind on it. If you can do something without someone, much better with, but you're ready, but you can execute a plan B, then I'm going to give you a little bit more rope. And the key things I'm going to look at really quickly is, especially if you got to vet really quickly, you got to look at those past patterns, key behaviors. I mean, you got to look at as much due diligence as you can do on whether they're going to perform and adhere to timelines you're looking for that you need on that kind of tempo, and whether you can ask them that or vet it through other people. And here's a great thing. Ask them to provide the types of references that can vet that for you. Because if they're transparent about who they're willing to let you talk to, that's someone I can trust. Because, if someone's being transparent about the areas you need transparency in, you're pretty good. And I'm also looking for language. And the language I'm looking for, again, are they seeking my thoughts and opinions? Are they talking in terms of my priorities? Are they validating me and they giving me choices along the way? And are they congruent with their nonverbals as they're using that language? So I'm looking for that transparency. I'm looking for transparency in the areas that you have questions about, and explain why you have questions, because you're on this op tempo that you need to maintain. Then you empower them with choices like, hey, if this isn't good for you, let me know now so I don't waste your time. But if it is, here's what I need to know in order for, us both to be comfortable with each other.
So I appreciate that. So part of my question was the answer I'm giving myself. Like, when am I okay moving forward with a partner, if you will, when I'm only at about an 80-85% comfort level and I have to make a decision now? Or should I do everything in my power to prolong that deadline on the decision so I can make sure my partner's at 90-95?
That's your choice.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it really comes down to your comfort level. It's like every investor has a different comfort level. So here's an interesting. So I actually wrote this down, one of the answers, because I had this conversation with an investor a couple of days ago, and he's like, "How do I vet someone, and talk in terms of their priorities if they're not really sharing their priorities with me? How do I understand? How do I stay in their investment strategy if they're not going to share their investment strategy with me?" And I said, well, why don't you ask them, you know, because again, and people in this line of work tend to be, they're not, you know, psychopathy and sociopath stuff. It's a graduated scale. It's kind of like autism, you know, and people in this high risk stuff tend to edge up higher. It's not a bad thing. It's just, they tend to be more grandiose about the things they're doing because they get a real charge about the things they're doing. And so I said, what I would do is ask them, hey, tell me about the most exciting deal you've ever done and when you felt best. And if they tell you about how they bought, you know, bonds, and how they felt so safe about it, as opposed to, you know, the risk they took, you know, that's going to, you know, tell you exactly the kind of investor they are. And so for yourself, I'd ask, you know, what kind of individual and what kind of situations were you, you know, have you done these things that gave you the greatest satisfaction, and the types of people in the past that have worked on this? In other words, assess your own risk about who you're willing to deal with and that level. You know, look at the successes and failures you've had in doing that, and say, and just, you know, in hindsight with these labels and meanings that we've given things, kind of give some labels and meanings to the people that you've had, and can kind of create your own scale about where you're comfortable. And if you start edging up on it, just be ready for that plan B.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you very much.
That makes sense?
It does. It does, for sure.
Okay. Wow, quiet now.
Jerome, you're on mute. You're on mute.
I'm still a rookie. So over the hour that we asked you for, do you have to go or can we keep going?
I can keep going.
Perfect.
So,
John,
a little bit more time anyway.
John, I think you had the next question. You might have two if you want to go ahead and hit those.
So I was also curious about with family members and stuff. So I think that's a challenge.
Yeah.
People that are close to you that you don't really have a choice to interact with, you know, that are a part of your life. And so how do you go about investing and managing trust in people that, you know, that tend to be unreliable, but that unfortunately you can't really remove them from your life due to, you know, family, close friends of spouses or neighbors or things like that?
Yeah, I saw this question here. I didn't realize it was for family members. Let me look at this one again. I don't need to. So, yeah, so you just got to know what to expect. You know, if someone's going to perform at something but they never follow through on it, now you know what the baseline is. You know, if it's a family member, yeah. So the best relation I'll give are my kids. You know, my kids are doing very, very well. I'm very fortunate. And so they, you know, my daughter just graduated from George Mason University. She's a nurse. She got a job like a week after graduation right now. Luckily, she chose the line of work that everyone wants right now. And my son is a junior at the Naval Academy. And they're all back there right now going through mayhem, bringing people in and trying to execute a mission where no one else in the country is. And so I remember there's times through their high school careers and middle school careers, especially high school careers, where, you know, they would say they were going to do one thing and not follow through and do it. And the question always comes back to, you know, being a resource. You know, let me go with my 3 anchors. So my 3 anchors for everything I do in life is, number 1 anchor is, and goal is healthy relationships with everyone I touch. You know, health, and I'll use professional if it's at the workplace, but healthy, happy relationship with everyone at home. I ask myself before something comes out of my mouth, before I take an action, is what I'm about to say or do going to help or hinder that healthy relationship, especially with family members. You need healthy relationships. Now, granted, if they're not looking for a healthy relationship, that's a different kind of category and story. But the second one is open, honest communication, transparency, because you cannot have that healthy relationship without that open, honest communication and transparency. And the third anchor, which applies here, is I'm an available resource for their success and prosperity without expectation or reciprocity. And this is where sympathy comes in. So the way you're an available resource is, I know and knew my children's, my family members' goals and objectives for everything they're doing in their lives. And anytime they said they wanted to do something, or they're going to do something, and they fell through on it, or they weren't performing, or they weren't doing it, I simply asked discovery questions. I never consider myself teaching, mentoring, and guiding. I like it when people teach, mentor, and guide themselves, and they do that when you ask them what I call discovery questions. And discovery questions are nothing more than me saying, you know, help me understand. You said you're going to do X, Y, and Z. And the reason why you said you're going to do X, Y, and Z is because it's going to get you to the point you're trying to go to. What happened? Do you not want to go to that point anymore? And if you do, let me know and we'll pick a different point. I remember, my daughter wanted to go to a university that didn't require her to have to do the types of things my son needed to do to get into the Naval Academy from Northern Virginia. And I remember my son asked me once, they say, Dad, how come you don't ride Caitlin on her grades like you ride her on mine and everything we're doing? I said, that's easy. Change your goal. It's really that simple. I am here to be a resource for your success. If you change your goal, then we'll do things differently. I remember, just anyone going, it's mayhem. It's literally mayhem, them going through their leadership challenges right now. And he got really frustrated at a point when he came back or chatting with me on the phone. He goes, I'm not going to do this anymore. I said, great. Don't do it anymore. What's our plan? Where do you want to go and how are we going to execute? Seriously. How are you going to start? I'll talk through everything with you. There's no judging it, not saying you're right or wrong or calm down. No. It's like, all right, if you want to do something different, what's your plan? Because I'm here to be a resource for you and your plan. And so when I see people saying one thing and not following through and doing another, if it doesn't involve me, it's just observation and, I'll laugh it off. But if it doesn't involve me, because if they're close enough, I just ask those discovery questions. And if there's that incongruent with their actions and what they're actually doing, then just pick different goals. Have them pick out. As I remember, someone said to me, "What if your son's, instead of going to the Naval Academy, wanting to be an astronaut, a pilot, you want to be a bricklayer?" I said, "All right, let's talk about how to take over a brick company one day." No problem. I'm with you. How can we maximize this and make it the best you can be? So does that help on that one?
Yeah, I think from a personal perspective, I think some of the challenges are sweeping things under the rug. I think back to your point around transparency, it's just kind of calling it out and saying, hey, you said you were going to show up to do this and you didn't show up, kind of what, like you said, are we on the same page or do we have the same goals or what's your expectation of this relationship?
And part of it, and then, so it also depends on the relationship too, is like, I counted on you. Do you want me not to count on you anymore? Because your actions would tell me you don't want me to count on you. If you want me to count on you, what kind of behaviors can you show me that I can count on you again?
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I mean, I think the challenge for most people is the transparency portion of it, right? We're kind of afraid to open up at times, or hey, if I ask that question, it's going to maybe hurt that other person. But really, they're the one hurting us. And
by just saying it that way, you made it about them. You made it about their actions. You're not judging their actions. Instead of saying, you suck and you got to do X, Y, and Z. No, you don't have to do anything. You let me down. And you let me down because you said X, but you performed Y. Do you want to let me down again or don't you? I don't have to count on you. Would you like me not to count on you? Because the way you count on people is that they actually can do what they say they're going to do and follow through on it. It's really up to you. You tell me what you want. Again, you're having them make their own choices. People do not like that, by the way.
I was going to say, that's a pretty powerful question. Do you not want me to count on you anymore? I mean, that's a pretty, I can definitely see someone, getting shook back in their seat. I mean, that's a pretty powerful question.
It's shaking. Yeah. And was I angry? No, I'm hurt. Because there's a key, it kind of goes back to what we're saying towards the beginning. People don't like being uncomfortable, and that makes people very uncomfortable because what are you doing? You're denying them the foundation of what we all seek and crave. We want to affiliate with meaningful people in our lives and we want to be valued. And you just said, do you not want me to value you? It's your choice. And here's all you have to do to be valued. Just say what you're going to do and do what you're going to say. That's pretty simple.
That's awesome. No, I really appreciate that response. That I think that's going to help a lot. Definitely.
Thanks. It's simple. To me, life is not, when I started uncomplicating life, it got really, really simple. And the way I uncomplicate it is I stopped judging it from my perspective. I stopped making it about me and what you did to me. No, you didn't do anything to me. You did it to yourself. If you want to be valued, here's all you got to do.
Really simple. Andy, you got something, bud?
Yeah. I just wanted to ask. You've talked a lot about it today, but maybe specific examples would be helpful. The idea of kind of change and death, them both being kind of, fear of the unknown, and maybe some examples of how you've been able to get either your team, is it a grieving period? Maybe examples in your own life when you changed from your job to author, kind of fighting through the stuck. Can you talk a little bit about that on change?
So help me understand the question a little bit better. So you want me to go ahead?
Yeah. So you, in your book, you talked a little bit about the idea of change being like death, right?
Right.
Because they both kind of have the fear of the unknown.
Right.
I'm wondering if you could just maybe expand a little bit on that, maybe in your own life or in your work.
Yeah.
I was fascinated by that idea.
No, it's a great question. It's a deep question for me. And so here's the way I live life, and here's how I've, and even now, I mean, I tell who hasn't struggled with a little COVID issues right now, and I too, I'm an extrovert, living in an introvert's world right now. And that's why thank you for having me on, because it's, my yeehaw of the day. So the way I live and view life is really simple. It's movement. And when things change, I embrace it. You have a choice. You either embrace the change or you don't embrace the change. And so people like to hold on, and which causes, so at the bedrock of this is I don't do crazy brain. Stress, anxiety, discontentment, frustration, anger, all these things create such a fog in our brain that we start losing the ability to see what is most important. That's the healthy relationships around us. Because when we get this crazy fog going, because we're having all these unhealthy emotions pop up, I really then identify what's causing unhealthy emotions, and it's hanging on to things. And so a lot of times when we're facing change, whether it's retirement, whether it's losing our ability to go out and interact with people, whether our business, our jobs, our children going off to college, these are change. And so I always look at it as I have mastered that which I was supposed to get from that experience, and I'm meant to move on to the next one. And so the faster I can figure out what that next experience is supposed to be, crazy brain won't be here. I'll be excited about the fact that instead of lamenting what you lost, I celebrate I mastered it. And even when it comes to loss of people in my life, I get very grateful for, and you hear people saying it, and they lip service, because it is part of it, is that, you celebrate the time you had because they mastered it. I mean, I had one of my coworkers, she's married for so long. She's been with the Bureau for 37 years, and she lost her husband tragically on July 4th last year, the year before. And there's nothing you can do to console anyone in that. And she's got 2 kids. Now she's got this keep working, for so much longer. And her and her husband were so close. They grew up together, went to high school together. And I said, the only thing I could say to her, think you could have loved each other any more than you possibly did. And she goes, no. And I said, you mastered it. That's it. I mean, we move on from the things we master, because once they're mastered, you move on. As horrible as it is at the moment, your example is the example for everyone else, because you are the master. So that's how I deal with change.
Yeah, I'm so glad I asked it. Thank you so much. Appreciate it, Rob.
You betcha, Andy. Yeah, I get very deep on some of these things. Thanks.
That was beautiful. Does anybody have any final questions before I ask the last one?
I do.
All right, Chris.
This is Chris. I'll make it really quick. Outside of your own books, what's something you suggest to help us better understand ourselves and these type of difficult situations? What's a book you suggest?
I haven't read it yet. It's on my list too. Ego's the Enemy, I think it's called. So Jerome, you're nodding on that one. So all these things we're talking about are really, really good. But the most important thing to be really good at what you're doing in all these areas is self-awareness. Self-awareness with humility. So anything that's going to give you the ability to do that, you guys know how to win. So I wouldn't focus on any books about how to win again. There's lots of people that can try to tell you how to win with this, and this. You want to win, which is through relationships. The best way you have relationships is books on humility. Live a humble servant life to others, and you will achieve the things it is you're trying to achieve. It's just hands down. It's just the way life works. And all everyone does in their own line of work, I think, is because, again, resource for the success and prosperity of others without expectation of reciprocity. A lot of times we're in lines of work that people don't understand what their critical vulnerabilities are for those areas of success and prosperity and safety. And so what we do in sales is help people understand, hey, you actually do have this critical area, and here I am bringing a resource for this area. I learned that through dealing with people that sell insurance. I said, selling insurance is really, really tough because no one thinks they need it. He goes, yeah, until you have a life crisis. Our job, all my job is to help you understand that we are here for you in those critical times in your life when you're going to need some security and some prosperity and to take care of yourselves. And so if that's, so that's what they do. It's like, well, that's a good way to put it. I get it now. Still not buying any from you, but good.
So ego is the enemy. Awesome. I appreciate
that's it.
it.
Ego's the enemy. Yep. That's my next one as well.
Thank you.
Anybody else got one to jump on?
Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Hello. Yeah. Well, I was just about saying something similar to what Chris mentioned. It was also the last question before we close. But anyway, it's just going to be like something similar to what he said. But, I have this quote I kind of believe in that, a lot of people learn how to, make cars or learn technology and all that. But you have to learn how to understand human beings, because you have to live with them, you have to work with them, your whole life's all about being with human beings. Yep. Like you said, you mentioned something. By the way, I really love your presentation. I've just been muted, just enjoying the whole nuggets of information you're giving out, which is perfect. You said actually earlier, I was like, you have your skill at the same time, but you need the people to actually get things done. And which is very important, because a lot of us here are professionals. We are skilled at what we do, but when it comes to the people side, the human nature side is something that is missing. So my question is quite similar to what Chris said. What do you think from your experience, actually, because from my understanding, the FBI, it kind of makes you a little bit more, I'll say, a professional at understanding people. So what do you think is the next thing to learn? Where's the recommendation? Like I said, with you, we are understanding behavioral predictability. From Navarro, we're understanding body language and force negotiation. But what do you think is the most important thing to learn to totally understand human nature in this context?
Most important book or most important thing?
Well, it could be both. It could be both, at least, yeah. Thing, book, still the same.
Believe it or not, I have not read a book in this area in quite some time, because we're all basically saying the same thing from a different framing and different background and context. Yeah. I think the most, I tell this to people. I have this nice gentleman I'm working with that he said, I want to be trained by you so I can be a behavioral expert. And I'm like, well, you already are a behavioral expert. And he goes, how so? And I said, because you desire to be one. Means that you're paying attention. And so all you need to do to get really good at this and better at this, again, it's a journey, not a destination, is just do it. Pay attention. And most importantly, when I went through the undercover certification school years and years ago, you get all these great high level, elicitation courses and X, Y, and Z, and it's emotionally exhausting because you're pretending to be someone you're not for 2 weeks. Yeah. And the best presentation we ever had that I got the most out of was, and I actually have the book upstairs. This guy, he got up in front of the class. This guy had worked white supremacists and gangs, biker gangs, his entire career. He's an older, grizzled guy. He had seen so much horrible things in his career. And he's there to give us a presentation on something. I don't even remember what it was. It was supposed to be blocked for 2 hours. He got up there for 15 minutes, and here's what he said. He held up Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And he showed us how he had in all his notes he took in the tabs and all the notes he'd made throughout the book. And he said, I bought this book 10, 15 years ago. He said, this is my Bible. He goes, welcome to the world of self-education, because that's what we're doing at our level. You know what you're doing. Now you just got to figure it out better. And the way you do that is to read, you execute what you read, you make it your own. Then the most important thing is you debrief yourself. What went right? What went wrong? How does this fit me and my personality? I mean, I recently did a fun podcast with someone. They wanted me to tell about the first days of me developing rapport and some funny stories where I failed majestically. I said, oh, those are fantastic. I can do that all the time. I made people feel creepy all the time until I learned what worked for me. These things and all these things we're talking about are great and understanding others, but they have to fit you and your personality, because, as when I remember years ago when I was at Paris Island, I was very intimidated. Here I'm a first lieutenant. I have 120 recruits, and I'm given this speech that you have to do the speech, and I got all these senior drill instructors behind me, and I'm leading them, and I was 28 years old or 27. You want to feel intimidated, but I was part of history here. I remember saying to my senior chief drill instructor, I said, Staff Sergeant Brunt, how should I be? So I thought I had to be like hardcore grizzled. He goes, just be yourself. They'll see through anything else. And so be yourself, but be self-aware. And self-aware means that watch your impact on others, take ownership for the things you cause them to do, because if people have a negative reaction around you, it's most likely because you flared up one of their insecurities. So figure out what that insecurity is and don't do that again. So to me, it's all about that self-education.
Wow. I think everything always comes back to that, right? You can go to all the training you want, but the self-study is what takes it to the next level and what truly makes you the expert.
Look at Marcus Aurelius. Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. Here's the Emperor of Rome, lived life very humbly, the best he could, trying to figure it all out till the day he died. It's what we all do. It's a great journey to try to make those connections with other human beings. And my focus has always been, what can I do? What's my part in creating good, healthy relationships where people feel understood, where they feel accepted and not judged? Doesn't mean I'm agreeing with you. It just means I understand you. And when people can do that, then all this mess that we're seeing right now just starts evaporating. Hopefully.
Yes. So I'm going to ask what seems to be a simple question, but I think you're going to dive deep on it. Can you ever trust a spy?
Oh yeah, that's right. You wrote that one. Like you can trust anyone. So when I read that, the thing that popped in my mind was, can they trust you? Because think about this. If someone is willing, if I'm dealing with a foreign intelligence officer that's spying for their country and they've agreed to cooperate with me and give me the jewels to their kingdom, at least they're saying they are, what do they now have to do? What's at stake for them? Their lives.
Everything.
Yeah, their lives. I don't have my life at stake. They have their life at stake. So it's actually a mutual trust thing. I remember, so yes, you can, but always be thinking in terms of why should they trust me? There's actually been cases where people came and approached both the CIA and the FBI, and they were willing to give us the jewels of the kingdom, and they walked away because they couldn't trust us. Trust goes two ways.
Wow. Well,
just like in any relationship, think about it. That's why I always say it's a sales job. It really is. I'm selling a concept that, helping protect the United States is a good idea. And it's non-tangible, it's wind and you get to put your life online for it sometimes. So sell that.
Well, Robin, we really appreciate how gracious you were with your time and coming in and sharing all these jewels. I've got all these messages that you probably can't see about how great this was and how
good.
Much it. Logan had to go take care of Ezra. I think he's 2 weeks old right now. So
I know, that's awesome. My thanks to everyone, and please, with your group, thank the book group. I thoroughly enjoyed the engagement. I've been looking forward to this since the day that you all decided you wanted to use my book. And thank you so much for great, thoughtful questions. This has been a lot of fun. And if anything pops up ever, you see me, I'm on LinkedIn. You can message me. I'm very interactive. So if anything I can do for any of you all at any time, please reach out. Okay.
I don't know. There's people that call in favors here, man. Thank you.
Sounds good. All I ask is, hey, go to my website, have people take my online training. That'll help me.
Definitely. Thank you so much. Thanks, Robin.
You betcha, guys. Best to all. Stay safe.
Thank you.